at least one of these books is bound to end up in your shopping cart before the end of this video, because, wait, is that a new shirt? Man, that looks great on you. See, a lot of people can't pull that off, but you almost do. I saw that on someone's Instagram reel last week. I wanted to try it. But anyway, so 5 books I read last month. The second one is like, it receives one of my highest recommendations. Like, it is like phenomenal. Like, you wait all year for a book that's this good, and like this is one of those books. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now because YouTube reasons. And the fourth book, the author sent it to me, and he and I have been talking for a little while. He's actually, like, he invited me to go to Iceland and actually kind of hang out with him and like talk about the book, and he's going to show me around. It's weird how you start, building a presence on, Instagram and YouTube, and all these opportunities to help and be helped just come along. I think that's super cool. And the book itself is, it receives like a pretty damn high recommendation for me. It's a sales book, but it's not like most sales books, and you're gonna get a lot out of it. I'm even getting my mother to read it, and she's not even in business. She wants to read it. Anyway, so the first book on this list is called Hyper-Focus by Chris Bailey, and it's one of the better books out there, and certainly one of the most comprehensive on focus, attention, and productivity. It's his follow-up to the Productivity Project, which I also enjoyed, and he explains in simple, helpful terms how to use this amazing but limited gift of time and energy we receive each day. As he says in the book, what you pay attention to becomes your life, and so you have to be extremely selective about what you allow into your attentional space. You need to ruthlessly curate your own reality, or else it'll end up being filled with other people's priorities and other people's agendas, or perhaps even worse, nothing meaningful at all. One of the things I like most about the book is that he makes the incredibly important point that productivity is about doing exactly what you intended to do, even if that is like resting or relaxing. Like if you meant to spend the entire day in bed relaxing, like recuperating, just resting, then you're being perfectly productive because you're doing exactly what you set out to do in the first place. So I think that's a helpful reframe. And as opposed to sort of thinking that you will always have to be like doing something, being like perfectly productive is like all about output. And the second book on this list is like a total refutation of that idea, that sort of hustle mentality, which has its place, but it's not everything. And it's so nice to see someone like Chris Bailey sort of address that in this book. And the second book I read last month was sent to me by the author as well. Again, this receives one of my highest recommendations. It's The Pathless Path by Paul Millard. I literally recommended it to someone, like a new friend of mine today, like earlier today, and most days I've recommended it to at least one person throughout the day. Like, and I've told my email list about it, like in my weekly newsletter that I send out. I've made posts about it. Like, this is like the book that like I'm recommending the most right now. And what he's doing in The Pathless Path is rethinking everything about work and what it actually means for our lives. The short version of Paul's story is that he was a highly paid consultant with McKinsey, but he hated the default path that he was on, which is his term for the script that society sort of forces down everyone's throat. Like you get good grades in school, you go to a good college, you apply for jobs, you work at that job for 40 years, and then you don't ask any questions, you just do what you're told to do, and then you sort of receive your gold watch at the end of it, and then you die. Paul's big idea doesn't sound so revolutionary, but it actually is when you think of it. Like when you think of the tremendous pressure that's put on you by almost virtually everyone else to take that default path. It is somewhat of a revolutionary act to say, hey, maybe work doesn't have to be like this. Maybe there's a different way, like a different path that I could go on. Maybe I could still pay my bills, but do it by following my curiosity and by helping people sort of discover their own pathless path, which is what he's done. And he's like, the result is this book, and it is just phenomenal, like I said. So I highly recommend this one as well. But I'll now get into the third book that I finished last month, which is The Every by Dave Eggers. This is another great book. I loved one of the first books that he ever wrote. It's called A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. And I won't go too much into that book, but it was really something special that nobody had seen before. Like when it first came out, it's like a fictionalized like account of the time in Dave's life. This is a real thing that happened. He lost both of his parents to cancer within a month of each other, and he had an older brother and an older sister, and they were sort of off doing their own thing, following the default path, if you will. And then he had a younger brother who was like 8 years old, and he was like 20 or 21 at the time. So it basically fell on him as like a 20-year-old kid to like not only like make the funeral arrangements for his parents and everything, but like raise this 8-year-old. And I realized I'm not telling you anything about the book that I read last month, which is The Every, but that book was so good I have to tell people about it, even though I'm talking about his other book. Anyway, so The Every, really quick, it's a companion novel to his to another book called The Circle, and it's basically about like the world takeover of this social media company. It buys Amazon and becomes like the dominant social media force. And so it's all about, you know, privacy and individuality, rights and liberties, convenience and authoritarianism and consumerism and all these other isms that are just really interesting. But he doesn't make them boring. Like it's within the larger context of a pretty fun book. So highly recommend The Every. I liked it more than The Circle. So if you read The Circle, you might not like that all that much. But then if you stick it out, there are parts of The Circle that make it worth reading. But then when you read The Every, it's worth it to read them both. So that's my feeling on that. I also do have some like the physical copies of some of these books. The first book I read on my phone, but this is the second book, The Pathless Path. And he actually sent me 2 copies of the book, hardcover and paperback, but this is it. And then the fourth book, the one that has me traveling to Iceland, is this one. And again, highly recommend it. It's called The Message from the Middle of Nowhere by Gunnar Andri Thorson, and it is like really, really spectacular. The author is one of the top sales trainers in all of Iceland. So it's a spectacular sales book. I mean, he's got decades of experience in sales. Some of the earliest stories in the book are him selling newspapers on the streets. He wasn't homeless, he was just selling newspapers. You get it. Anyways, but it's not just a sales book. There's a little bit about business, of course, itself, but also just about character development and becoming a better person. You know, that as well. There's a big emphasis on honesty, which is fantastic because, I mean, it really is the best policy. You don't have to keep all these stories straight in your head if you just tell the truth the first time, if you're genuine with people. And it, you know, I mean, who would have thought, but it actually leads to more sales and more, you know, business success and life success. Just be honest with people. It's just such a cheat code. Anyway, so there's that, but it's also kind of a travel book because he talks up Iceland so much, and like to the point where he sold me on the idea of going there. Like I'll be going there in a few months to spend some time with him, kind of hang out on the island and see what Iceland's all about. And so he sold me on that idea. This book literally came out of nowhere to be one of my top recommendations for 2023, and that leads me to the last book on this list, which is a phenomenal leadership book by the name of The Essential Wooden, and it's written by John Wooden, the basketball coach, and Steve Jameson. And this is a book that every single person can benefit from. It's so incredible. I don't even watch basketball, but John Wooden won like 9 NCAA championships in a row or something stupid like that. He won 88 basketball games in a row, which is pretty insane. And I think he had just one losing season, which was his first season, like in the 30s. And then after that, he had nothing but winning seasons. But that's not the interesting thing about him. The interesting thing is that never once, not past like 1940 or whatever, not once did he mention winning. Like he never talked about winning. What he talked about instead was his idea of competitive greatness, which has to do with giving every single thing that you have within you to this thing that you're doing. It's about preparing completely and totally and just giving your full total effort to whatever it is that's in front of you, and then sort of letting winning or like letting the score take care of itself. He basically says that if you did every single thing that you possibly can to be your absolute best, then there's nothing that it can ever say on the scoreboard that will make you a loser. This is one of the best leadership books that I've ever read, and you know that I'll be featuring it on the Stairway to Wisdom, my library of expert book breakdowns. Now, you can find all that in the link in the video description, and along with all my book notes from every single book that I've read, which is almost 1,200 books right now. That's all on my Patreon, like thousands of pages of notes, organized by by book and everything, all on my Patreon for $1. $1 single. And I'd also like to thank my new and returning Patreon supporters right now. Their names are up on the screen. And if you're not quite ready to pick up a book and you want to watch another video instead, I would humbly suggest this one right here. It's one of my better videos, I think, and it's all about obsession and what it takes to be the absolute best. So I hope to see you next time, and hey, happy reading.
To do something great, sacrifice is a part of it. It's just the start of it. You can't start and quit. You have to harness this, cause energy is bliss. And when I swing, I miss, but then I swing and hit. So I'ma swing again and I'ma swing again.